what's up? It's Mike B with Bombero Bus, and today I'll be putting this electric fuel pump into Roxanne, my 1970 VW bus. So let's get to it, and I'll tell you why. The number one why is, why not? I've been running this mechanical fuel pump for a while. I'm ready to try an electric fuel pump and, just do a comparison and see which one I prefer. But, these do have problems. This particular one hasn't been a problem, but I did a video on the fuel pressure out of it, and unless you have a really expensive gauge that you trust, I just couldn't come to trust the number. I had two different gauges that were giving me two different numbers as far as PSI, and sometimes I just feel like it is pushing a little bit too much fuel pressure to the carbs, and there are solutions for that that I won't go into, but they have to do with stacking gaskets and grinding down the rod that's in there. There are solutions, but hey, let's have some fun today. I have that fuel pump anyway. I got it to start the Type 4 from the barn find that I found, and it's going to be a while before I get to mess with that again. So let's put that fuel pump into Roxanne and see how it goes. Some more problems with these can be if they fail. If that diaphragm in there fails, you can be pumping fuel straight into your crankcase, and every now and then I do smell some fuel in my oil, and I end up changing the oil a lot, and it's something I'm always concerned about. So let's try this electric fuel pump and see if we can take some of those worries off of my mind. Also, we'll be having the luxury of getting this filter out of the engine compartment. So, that's a big discussion amongst VW people about where to put that filter and how it can cause fires. Honestly, this solution is going to take that filter out of the engine bay altogether, because I'll show you that Carter. It's going to go down on the bottom. I'm going to mount it under there-ish. And the only thing coming through here will be the fuel line through that firewall that feeds the two carburetors. And they'll stay in the back, in the area where it's cool. None of this line will be up here getting hot. Looking forward to it. So let's climb under there and start getting some things done. The pump I'm gonna run is this Carter. This particular one is advertised for air-cooled VWs at 2.5 to 3 PSI. It doesn't sound like a lot, but that's what those engines need. I think that's the part number, if you can see it. Just got this one off of Amazon. You really have to shop around, and the prices I've seen vary from $40 to $80. So do some shopping around and see if you can find your best price. I went ahead and marked a positive and a negative myself, so that when I get under there, I won't be having to struggle to read those on the end. Carter, Amazon, 2.5 to 3 PSI. This is the hardware that came with it. You got a bracket for hanging it wherever you choose. Of course, there's your bolt for holding it. Just a couple of other things. Some hose clamps are in there, and the electrical connections came with it. So I'm gonna crawl under there and see if I can find a good place to put this pump. So one thing I recommend when you're crawling around underneath these any car, not only in the South but anywhere, is situational awareness. Of course, you're gonna have it chocked and think of safety, but don't forget to look around for, in this case, a black widow. And she's right over where I need to be for a little bit. And it's just too much of a risk to take. A little bite from her can put you off track for a while. So I'm gonna relocate her to the woods with her other friends, and we'll get right back to it. Okay, to give you a bearing of where we're at, that is the transmission and axle. You can see I've grounded that red wire as the ground of the fuel pump. grounded it to the transmission, and what I've done is mounted the fuel pump to the frame itself. Just want to give you an idea. We're still going to do some cleaning up of the hoses, but wanted to show you where I chose to mount my fuel pump. Then from underneath there, the fuel line comes from the pump through this firewall into this T, and has a line that splits off of it to feed each carburetor. So everything still needs to be cleaned up. I don't want to speak to how you should connect your fuel lines. That's for you to decide what is best and the most safe. I find I prefer to have this always visible, this T, so that I can open this back hatch and look in there and see if I have any leaks at it. But if you remember from before, the Advantage is great because I've already ran it, I'll tell you, and I shot the temps on the fuel line back there, and the highest one I got was 109. When I used to have them coming from behind the distributor from that pump and over here, this section always got really hot. In fact, this section would get up to 135, 140 degrees. Of course, if you know about vapor lock and such, that is a good number to have. Also, you can see that sketchy filter that we usually run on these engines is completely out of this engine compartment. A big, beefy, much better product of a filter is now in line and underneath the bus. So any fuel leaks under there, less likely to combust and start the dreaded fire. So far, I like this setup. I'll show you what I'm gonna do up front as far as hooking power to the pump. But before we do, let's take a quick minute to talk about the old reliable mechanical fuel pump. So if you'll see, mine is still on there, even though I've already driven the bus with the new electronic fuel pump intact. So what they say is if you're nostalgic and you just like the look of these, you can leave them on there and you already have a backup plugged in and ready to play. Should your electronic one ever fail you, you can tie back into this one. I'm not nostalgic in that way because I have often found myself frustrated by the placement of this fuel pump. I will remove it and I'm going to put a block off plate on there. If you want to time your distributor, or you need to get to the bracket for your ignition coil, or you want to tighten up, retorque the nuts for this alternator stand, many times have I found this fuel pump to be in my way. So I do choose to remove it, and I'm going to put a block off plate on it. This is after I run the electric fuel pump some more and develop a trust for it. So the question arises, if I remove this pump, there is a rod down there that rides up and down off the distributor drive. And people say if you remove that rod, you're going to experience a drop in oil pressure in your engine just through the sheer displacement. There was a void that used to be filled with a rod. Now the rod is gone, so oil will travel into that void and therefore cause an overall decrease in oil pressure throughout your engine. I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, I'm gonna swing at it, but to me, the oil passage, or where that rod travels, is such a small orifice, and I don't have an overly built engine. I just don't see where it could cause this drastic drop in oil pressure. So for me, I'm going to pull my fuel pump off, pull that rod out. I'm going to put the block off plate on there, and I'll keep the pump with me in Roxanne as a backup should I ever need it on the road. So you can do what you want to do, but that's the road I'm going to test out. So let's get to the front now, and I'll show you how I'm going to wire this thing up. I got my fuse box with the switched fuse right there. That fuse gets powered when I turn on the key. So I'm going to hook this wire to it. That'll send power down that wire to this switch. Of course, I'll be able to turn the pump on and off with the key, but I want to have this switch as a secondary to be able to turn off the fuel pump. That power gets sent to this relay. The relay is going to amplify the power because these wires get long going back and forth through a bus, and send that power through that wire over there, and there's a tube underneath the bus where that wire goes and makes its way to the fuel pump. So then the fuel pump will have power amplified through this relay, be able to turn the pump on and off with this switch and also the key. There's one more wire coming off of this relay, and that is a ground. You got to ground your relays, so it'll get grounded to the body under there somewhere. I'm going to leave this all loose. I'm not going to mount anything yet. If it works and I run it for a while and gain some trust in it, I will mount those and put them more clean install, and also remove my mechanical fuel pump and block it off. Okay, so you've seen where I mounted my fuel pump. You've seen how I have it being fed through the firewall into the engine bay where the fuel comes in. And you've seen how I've hooked into my fuse box. So without mounting anything, first let's give it a trial run, and if it goes good, I'll clean all this up. But this is what is going to happen. I'm going to turn on my key, and I didn't hear any fuel pump come on. That's because I still have to hit this switch. So I hit the switch and the fuel pump came on. Now let's turn it over. And what I intend is for this to be a kill switch. If I ever can't turn it off with the key, I'll use this switch and stop the fuel going to my engine, should that ever be needed. So, so far, so good. Okay, final test. It's been running a little bit, starting to warm up now. No fuel leaks. No fuel leaks. I'm gonna leave this kill switch in its on position. Turn it off at the key, and I should not hear the fuel pump running. And I do not. So I'm gonna call that a win, and start cleaning up some of this wiring and finding proper mounting places for my relays and switches. But that's how I decided to install an electric fuel pump inside Roxanne. All right, let's take her on a little test run with this electric fuel pump. Yeah, it does. First gear, it's idling good. Let's see if she's still got a little punch. Got a little punch to it. Yeah, feels good. Pulls pretty smooth. Can't really tell any difference in performance per se, but you know, I guess just knowing that little filter's not in the bag, and that my fuel lines are staying cooler. I can shut this pump off manually if I want to. So far so good. I'm enjoying it. Like I said, I'm going to keep the manual one on here, mechanical one for a spare in case anything goes wrong, but have a backup. Everything still feels really good. It's pulling nice. I think after this ride, if I get back and check my temperatures and everything's good, I might go ahead and pull that mechanical pump off and put that block off plate on there. Been running it a while now, double, triple checking, not seeing any leaks. Starting to build some trust in it. There it is. I'm back. It was a good ride. Don't have any fuel leaks. If you can see, I've already went ahead and put the block off plate on there for now. What you see are the studs that held on the fuel pump, and what they want you to do with that block off plate is pull those studs out, and then they give you 2 bolts that come in from the top, and then you get a flush look. But I'm not about to pull those studs. One thing I've learned about these Volkswagens are some things you minimize messing with, and any stud that goes into a case to me is one of them. So I'm going to leave it like that. I have really appreciated the room. So far I've already found that back nut behind the alternator was loose, because I can never get to that. That one's very difficult, and I really do enjoy having that space open. So here's the things. You have to realize I drive this thing a lot, and I'm very tuned into this engine. So first off, it did seem a little quieter to me, probably indiscernible to anyone else, but if you think about it, that mechanical fuel pump does have a rod in there that's going up and down and rattling, and it's joins in the symphony that is the air-cooled engine. But it seemed a little more quiet to me, and maybe that's what it was. As far as the fuel delivery, I didn't notice a performance gain or loss, but it did seem like the fuel delivery was more, I guess, linear is the word. It was just a smoother delivery across every gear, and I could see that being because that mechanical fuel pump delivers a pulsing rhythm. You know, once that diaphragm is going up and down, and before I pulled that pump off, I put my finger up there, and you could feel the air pulsing out of it. So that's how your fuel was being delivered also. And I could definitely feel a more linear fuel delivery response throughout all the gears. So, you know, only time will tell. And no one is arguing, not from here anyway, which one is better. It's just fun to try different things and find out for yourself. So that's where I'm at. Gonna run it for a little while. Probably gonna grab another one as a spare in case that one, you know, poops out on me. But either way, I like it so far. Gonna run it. There it is, all done. Electric fuel pump has been installed. It's my first time doing this, so if anybody with experience saw something I did that is just terribly wrong, please feel free to leave a comment. If you liked it, subscribe. But either way, thanks for watching Bombero Bus, and we'll catch you on the next one.